Hey everyone, welcome to the fifth and final day of the Kennesaw State University Summer Arts Intensive. I'm Professor Chris Malone, and today I'm going to be going over quite a bit of things in today's workshop. I'm going to be going over how to export your work from Adobe Animate, how to share it online, how to clean up your line work in Adobe Photoshop, how to do proper lettering in comics, and then finally, I'm going to be ending it with how you can even piece your work together in your own mini zine and share your comic work. So today's workshop may seem like I'm going to be covering over a lot of work, but the intention for it is going to be pretty much taking all of the hard work that you guys have been doing throughout the course of the week and polishing it and completing it in a way that you'd be able to share it with friends, family, and hopefully take it even further than that. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started with the animation portion of this workshop. So yeah, I will see you guys in a minute in Adobe Animate. Okay, so here we have the Esper character rig that we created for Adobe Animate on Tuesday, and we're going to go ahead and export it out in a couple different ways. Now, before I begin, I would like to point out that I am currently using a Mac for today's workshop. On Tuesday, I worked on a PC. So even though I'm working with two different operating systems, the export process is still going to be the exact same between the two computer types. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. If we go over here to File, and if we were to just choose Save As, all we will be doing is creating an Adobe Animate file. So that's not something that you'd be able to view using your phone or any other type of media player. Essentially, you're just creating a file that can be read by Adobe Animate. This way you can send it off to clients or to friends or anyone else working on the file with you, or in case you just need to save it to take it back and forth between your home computer and the one that you have at school. Now, if you would like to export it out to put it up either online or on your phone, we just go down here to export, where we got a couple different options here. Now, the ones that say export image, that will be if we just want to export a single frame or one of the images that we have for our piece. Now, if we wanted to save it out as a video or a movie, or we would just use these two. And then if we wanted to save it out as an animated GIF, we would go ahead and choose this. All right, so we're just processing it right here. Now, one thing I would like to point out is that the color white will automatically be transparent if you have this button selected, and it just says transparency. We're just going to go ahead and give it a second, and that's what it looks like, transparent. It's not going to come out as clean as you would like, so I'm going to go ahead and just turn that feature off. But this way, if you have a repeating walk cycle or a dance or something about your animation that you just want to repeat on an infinite loop, this is how you would pull that off. So a few of the other things you would have over here too is that you can change the amount of colors in the piece. So if I were to choose 16, you may or may not have noticed it here, but the preview image just really lost a lot of quality. If I hop back to 256, it's still a little less quality, but it's still better than before. Now, once we're all good and ready, we're going to hit save. I'm going to choose Esper Loop, and it will save it out for us. So I'm going to hop over to Finder, and here is our loop. Oh, and by the way you can see this is if you just hit the space key on the keyboard, or if you were to click and drag this and open it using any internet browser. All right, so let's go over how to export it out as a movie file. So one of the things with this is that I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my sketch layer, so that way I don't accidentally include it in my video. All right, so next up I'm going to go to File, Export, Export Video/Media. Now up here at the top we have Render Size, so we could choose the size that it'll be rendered out as. You can choose for it to be the entire movie, a particular scene of your animation, or you can have it start at a certain time and end at a certain time too. Here, we can choose the different file types that we will be saving it out as. I'm going to save it out as a QuickTime, You have a couple presets you can work with here. I found that just working with the default one should be working just fine. Now here for the export, or not for export, for output, we just choose where we would like to save it out as. Conveniently, I already have the folder pre-selected here. Hit save, and I hit export. Great. Now this actually exported out really quickly because it was only 2 seconds. But sometimes the export process can take up to a few minutes, even hours, depending on the length and intensity of your animation. I always tell all of my students to prepare their animations the night before, prepare their exports the night before, because I have had a few students come to class, export their pieces 5 minutes before class starts, and the class ends by the time that their piece has been exported, and that's always really unfortunate and never a fun thing to experience. And in fact, the video that I created for Thursday, that entire video took my computer 4 hours to render it out. So if you ever have to render anything for a project, please give yourself enough time to make sure that you can let your computer do its thing. Alright, so we have our video right here. And unfortunately, the newer version of Mac OS is running on something called 64-bit as opposed to 34-bit, or 32-bit. And if you ever get this problem with your Mac, what I would recommend that you do is open up the program Imovie. Imovie comes free with all of your, with every single Mac. And all we have to do is just simply drag and drop that right into the right into iMovie. You may have to go up here where it says crop and choose fit, so that way you're not going to lose any of the scene. And when you're ready, you go over here to the top right. You can choose file, and you have a bunch of different options to save it out as. So I'm going to go ahead and choose it as Esperdance. Hit next. This will allow you to choose where you want to save it out as. I'm going to go ahead and save it right in here. And let's go check it out. So it saved it out as an MP4. Oh, actually I tried opening it before it finished rendering. Sorry about that. Now it will work. Pretty sweet. Okay, guys, so that covers it for exporting everything with Adobe Animate. Alright, comic creators, I'm going to be showing you how to be able to use Photoshop to clean up your artwork, how to be able to remove your pencil lines, and also how to kind of prepare it for color too. So let's go ahead and open up the Adobe Photoshop program, and I'll see you guys there. Guys, so this is the comic page that I had pre-scanned here called My Lady Victoria. It was a short comic I did a couple years ago, and this was my favorite pages from it. It was a really super fun page to work on, especially right here in the middle if you couldn't tell. Now, I have a lot of cleanup that I would want to do with this, and I'm going to show you how you can do that right here in Photoshop. So, Photoshop is a tool that is going to be working primarily with pixels. Unlike Adobe Illustrator and Adobe Animate, which uses vectors, this is going to be using something called DPI. So if I were to hop over here in Photoshop and go over to Image, scroll down to Image Size, I will be able to see the width and the height and the resolution of my comic page here. Now, the higher the resolution, the better quality it will be. However, it will, of course, take up more memory space in your hard drive. It used to be where a lot of people would work kind of in between 300 and 600 DPI, but I've seen a lot of cartoonists work up to 800, and even a couple for a lot of the comics made here in Atlanta are done up at 1000. I actually have a friend of mine who works in the Rick and Morty comic series, and they actually do all of their work in 100 DPI. Personally, I like working in 600. It's been working just fine for me in the last couple years, and yeah, so we're just going to stick with this. 300 should be the absolute minimum that you work in. because anything less than that on today's monitors, you'll really start to see like a lot of you'll see like a lack of quality with it. So let's go ahead and hit OK here. Now the first thing that I want to do, this is something I'm really excited about, is you're going to see that I have some blue lines from my pencil work on a lot of my characters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that very easily by going over to Image, Adjustments, and then we are going to go into Channel Mixer. Now Channel Mixer will be able to take a single color and remove it all together from the scene. So let's go ahead here, and as we can see here, this lady has some blue right here, and as we can see it on the guy over here as well. If we go to Preset, you see that we have black and white with different filters. So if I were to choose the blue filter, check that out. We can see all of those blue lines go away super quickly. Let's try that again. So this is what it used to look like. I just need to go to black and white with blue filter, and boom, it is gone. Now, this is the reason why on Wednesday I urged everyone that if you work with a colored pencil for any of your comics, that you stick to one color for the whole page. So that way, you could use this method and easily get rid of it. And check that out, guys. It's already looking a lot better. So I'm going to go ahead and hit F on my keyboard. That's going to get me into a full screen mode. Personally, I like working in full screen. You don't have to. This is just a personal preference of mine. So another thing I'm going to do too is I want to get rid of this line right over here. I hit I on the keyboard right over here, and that would get me this this ink tool right here. Now, of course, it's just a simple basic white, but I'm going to hit B on the keyboard to get to my brush or my pencil tool. For this method, it doesn't really matter which one here. I'm going to bring the size up quite a bit. Still a little too small. So I'm going to bring that up to 70. Yeah, that should do the trick. Now, if you hold down the Shift key and scroll up and down, you can just get rid of a lot of those little blemishes that you have around. I'm going to hit Command minus to zoom out just a little bit here. Actually, Command 0 will center everything. Now, that's a little, yeah, it's definitely been scanned a little off center here. So what I could do, there's a couple different routes with that. I could just simply hit, go over here, background. I'll drag it down here to new, and I make a brand new copy of this layer. I hit Command T on the keyboard, or you could just go over here to Edit and Free Transform, and I'm going to rotate it just ever so slightly and use the arrow keys to just nudge it right into the center here. Now we are seeing the other background popping out. We'll get rid of that in just a minute here. Oh, and I hit Return on the keyboard to apply the transformation tool. Hit Delete, or actually what I did here, I selected my background layer, hit Delete, boom, there we go. Now we're left with that transparency here that I mentioned previously when making the Esper animated GIF. So all I would just kind of want to do here is just hit G on the keyboard, and that will get me my paint bucket tool. I can just grab this color right here and lay down some color. Now we're still going to have a few other issues that we want to get taken care of as well, such as some areas that may be a little bit more gray than others, or we just need to sharpen it up a little bit. For instance, like right here underneath this harsh cast shadow under the guy in the wheelchair, where just so you guys know exactly what's going on here, somebody hits the door, somebody rings the doorbell, and the man in the wheelchair refuses her help and decides to go down the stairs completely on his own as a sign of independence. And it was a lot of fun making these sound effects. So, all right. So let's say I want to affect my, like my colors a little bit more, or the white and black that I had. You got two good options for this: levels and curves. Personally, I prefer using levels, and by taking these little lines or these little icons right here, I can drag them a little closer, and I can make it a lot sharper or a lot darker, depending on what I would like right here. Now, let's say you decided to use your pencils with gray instead of a colored pencil. This would be a great way to go in and remove a lot of the gray from your piece. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And I'm going to go ahead and open up my history so you guys can see the difference here. This is what it looked like before, and this is what it looked like applying levels. So the other one you could work with, I went back to before here, you could go to Image, Adjustments. We're going to try Curves. Now curves is another way to be able to get some sharper colors by just taking these lines, you're just dragging them around and tweaking it until you're able to find a version that you like. Personally, I enjoy working with levels more, so I'm just going to go back here and just bring these colors a little closer, just make it a little sharper. And there we go. So this is a good looking cleaned up page. So versus what I had before, that's what I started with. And this is what it's looking like already. And I just noticed I do have a bit of transparency hanging out up here. Boom, taken care of, super easy. So now that we have this, we can go ahead and push it even further. Now, what I mean by pushing it even further, I'm talking about just going with pure black and pure white. If you work with grayscale, this is not going to be a method for you. But if you work with pure white and pure black, such as myself, what I do is I will go over to Image, Mode, and I will change it to grayscale. I'm going to take it a step further by going to Image, Mode, Bitmap. Now, it'll ask me if I want to flatten layers. I only have one layer, so it doesn't really matter. You have to, regardless, you have no option with it, so you have to flatten all your layers. This will give you an option here to turn it into a bitmap. Now, the method here, you got a couple different methods. I'm going to choose 50% threshold, which means that every color, or every instance of white and black, or gray in this case here, every instance of gray that is closer to black will be 100% black, and everything that's closer to white will be 100% white. I'm going to hit OK, and we notice that it looks like I do have a few little issues right here. What this does is that it makes it really easy to figure out where some of your blemishes are going to be. And you'll also notice too that if you zoom in really far, you'll see pretty much what I did was I turned it into a pixelated image. Now that may not seem exactly too exciting because you're not going to see it here, but after I go to Image, Mode, Grayscale, I'm going to size ratio 1, Image, Mode, RGB, which by the way, in case you're not familiar with that, RGB stands for red, green, blue. Those are the colors that you will see on devices such as tablets and computers, while CMYK refers to cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, which are the four colors used in printing processes. So I would recommend that if you are intending for your piece to be printed, work in CMYK. If you are intending for it to be viewed online first, and primarily online, work in RGB. So I'm intending for this to be online, I'm going to work in RGB. So here we go. We have this as an RGB file where all the lines are going to be are going to be pixelated. Now this is going to be really helpful for the coloring process as well as just saving it. It will make your files a lot easier to save. And when I say a lot easier to save, it will be a lot smaller file size. Alright, so big question is, how do you get started with coloring? Now, I have a lot of thoughts of coloring. In fact, actually, I could do an entire workshop on coloring. So I'm just going to go ahead and get you started with the process here. Now, like earlier, if we just take background and drag it down to the new layer icon, we have it up here as a second layer. I'm going to go ahead and hide the one underneath here. We take background copy right here. I'm going to double click on the title and just type in inks. Now, the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to click this and go to multiply. Now, I'm going to choose background, create a layer in between this, do colors, and let's use a color that will be bright and easy for everyone to see here. So I'm going to go ahead and go with green. Using my paint bucket tool, I'm going to click here, and you will see that all instances of white on my inks layer will be invisible. That's because I was using the multiply blending tool right here, or blending method. So this way you can just go in and it will be super easy to fill in your colors now. Another thing too is that by using this method, by having your inks layer right here at the top, I can click this lock button, and that way it will still remain in place. However, I don't have to worry about accidentally coloring on the wrong layer. Alright guys, so this is it for how to be able to get your comics cleaned up, how to remove your pencil lines, and how to also prepare for colors and kind of get started with it. There's a lot more detail you could do with coloring, but like I said earlier, that could be a workshop entirely on its own. I just wanted to be able to give you guys a fun little way to get started with it here. Well, thoughts on sound effects real quick. I recommend that you actually draw your sound effects out in your inks. The reason why is that there's nothing more disappointing than to see some amazing artwork accompanied by weak-looking sound effects done by the computer. Since the sound is coming from the comic world, it makes sense for it to look like it's coming from the comic world. So that's why I always prefer to draw my sound effects rather than using the computer for them. Speaking of sound effects, I want to go over dialogue and word balloons in comics for just a little bit. Now, word balloons are often kind of the last thing that a lot of people will think of when they're creating their comic. And that's unfortunate because comics are a blend of artwork and words coming together. And so they're just as important as everything else that you draw inside of your comic book page. So go ahead and grab a sheet of paper. Pen or a pencil will be fine, and we're going to go over how you can improve your word balloons and get some really cool effects out of them. So I've been using my dogs as examples for every demonstration this week, and I think we should go ahead and continue that tradition with today. So I'm going to be using the phrase, Esper, go fetch the ball. Now that is that's a phrase that she hears quite often because she lives to play fetch. So I think this could be a lot of fun. Now, I'm going to show you guys a few wrong ways to do lettering first. So if I were to do Esper, go fetch the ball, that's going to be a really super long word balloon. That's not going to be efficient at all. Another example of an inefficient word balloon would be something along the lines of Esper, go fetch the ball. So we got one here that is way too tall, another that is way too short. Now, if we were to try separating some of this and breaking it down into a couple different lines, there's a few right ways and a few wrong ways. One of the wrong ways would be something like Esper, comma, go fetch the ball. Now, it's still a little shorter, or not, or thinner than the top line here, but it's still not exactly where we need it to be just yet. So the best one that we can go with would be a line like Esper, go fetch the ball. This is one that will be balanced right perfectly in the middle and will be the easiest for the reader to read and experience. So why is this one the easiest one to go with? So that is using a diamond method here. Let me get another sheet of paper. That allows the word balloon to have a good amount of padding around the side. So let me just write this one more time here. Esper, go fetch the ball. So if I were to make a mark up here, over here, over there, and down here, it creates a really good diamond shape between all four corners of our word balloon. So when it comes time for us to fill in the side like this, we now have all this. Let me use the other side right here. We have a really good amount of padding on the sides. It looks like I'm running out of ink on this this marker here, so you got a good amount of padding up here at the top, up on the sides, up at the bottom, and this is what I refer to as the diamond method. So whenever you come up with a word balloon, go ahead and give that a shot. Come up with a five-word sentence. Find a way to be able to kind of break it up in the way that I just did right here, and go from a minimum of about 3 lines right here. And you'll be really pleased with how this will automatically improve your word balloons right away. Now, another thing about word balloons, this is something I get questioned about all the time, is how long should a word balloon be? And there's no one real official rule for a word balloon, but I would recommend that a word balloon should be pretty much one breath, in my opinion. So you can sometimes have a few sentences in there if you want, but you don't want to make it too wordy. So I just recommend keeping it to a single breath of air. So let me go ahead and create another one right here. A good 2-part word balloon. So we have Esper, go fetch the ball. We have her say, Esper, go fetch the ball. No, not that ball. So actually, I have an idea. To make this a little easier and a little quicker on you guys, we'll just do word balloon 1 and word balloon 2. Now there's a couple ways that you can connect these. So let's say this is going to say Esper, go fetch the ball, and here I'm going to say no, not that ball. We have a hard rubber ball and a soft tennis ball. The hard rubber ball is one that makes a lot of noise and has sometimes annoyed the people who live below us. So one of the ways you can connect them together would just be simply having a tail like this going from 1 to 2. Because of this, we don't need to have that extra little tail right there. Now, the reading order for word balloons is going to be just the same as that of your comic book panels, where in the English language, we're going to be reading from left to right, up to down. So the same is going to go for our word balloons. So we have two people talking. We got person A, person B, and a person A is going to start off the conversation, so they're going to have number 1. Now person number 2 is going to be saying something, or not person number 2, person B 2, and we will have person 3's retort right here. So what this would look like if we had full dialogue would be one word balloon going to person A, one word balloon going to person B, and then we will have a connection like this, where we're going to go from left to right, up to down. Now, 2 is not so high that it's going to, or is not so low that it will make us, accidentally miss it. But this way we're able to read from left to right pretty easily. If we were to have another one right over here, this might be 4, or it might accidentally get read as number 2. So I would avoid some issues like this right here by putting it over to the side, because that may make it feel a little out of place. It may get read out of order. So I would recommend for something like this, just to kind of keep this going on right over here, you could even do a word balloon here. That would be number 4, and get rid of that little block. So essentially we would be left with a word balloon shape that would be more like this. So that way we're able to have multiple sentences, multiple breaths, but still continue the conversation between persons A and person B. So next up, let's go over the tails to word balloons. Now, a word balloon can't be complete unless it has a tail indicating where the sound is emanating from. So I have a figure right here yelling, "Esper, go fetch the ball," with 4 different word balloon tails coming from the word balloon. So let's examine them and see which ones are correct and which ones aren't. So the first one right here, this one looks like it's coming straight from the hand. So is it facing the character? Yes, but it's also making it sound like the sound. It makes it feel like the sound is coming from the hand. So this is a no. Now this one right here is going straight up to the mouth. In fact, it's actually overlapping the character unnecessarily. I could even take it even further, make it sound like it, make it feel like it's coming straight from his mouth altogether. That's pushing it a little too far. That'd be a no. Now this one right here is still aimed at the mouth, but we have a good amount of distance between the tail itself and the figure, and it's leading us from the word balloon to the mouth. So this would be the correct one right here. Now this one right here is still kind of leading to the mouth, but is awkwardly placed up at the top. So this would still kind of work. It's not as bad as these, but this would be the one that would be the preferred one. So we're going to give this a double check mark, while that one would be kind of a check question mark. Now another thing too is that with word balloons, in case you have somebody yelling from off panel, so I'm going to have Esper here yelling bark. The way to indicate that the sound is coming from off screen would be to have the word balloon tail go all the way to the edge here. Another important word balloon trick is going to be how to depict a whisper in a comic. Now, a whisper is very soft, usually hard to hear, and initially many cartoonists will just think to themselves that they just have to draw it really small. So I'm going to draw this guy just going Esper. That's it's going to be really hard for us to see and read. Now, that's going to be a little small for us. Now, does it come across as a whisper? Yes, but it makes it hard for the reader to actually read it. So it kind of fails in its purpose. So another thing you could do to make it feel like it is going to be a whisper would be to actually do it not as big as you normally would. We got Esper right over here. And remember that diamond trick that I showed you guys earlier? Where normally you would kind of place it right here, right here, right here, right here. Give yourself extra padding. More than you think you're going to need. So here, by giving it extra padding than everything else, it's going to come across as more soft. So this would be a really good way to be able to indicate a whisper visually that's not going to be straining the eyes of the reader. Well, comic creators, we have covered a lot this week. We went over how to strengthen our visual narrative skills, how to be able to tell better stories through comics, how to improve our inking, how to improve our character design and have our characters tell a story. We went over word balloons. We went over how to clean up all of your artwork in Photoshop. We've covered a lot. So the final thing that we're going to be going over is how to piece it together and make your own comic book. So the way that this is going to be working right here is we got to plan it out first. Now, whenever you print anything, especially if it's going to be double-sided, one sheet of paper, such as this, is going to allow us the opportunity to have 4 pages printed on it. So what I mean by that is I have 3 sheets of paper right here. Let's say we were going to do an 8-page story. Personally, I love doing 8-page stories because I feel like you're able to get a good story told in that amount of time without it feeling like it's going to be too short or going on for way too long. So we got 3 sheets of paper right here. So I'm going to just take this, fold it in half. Cool. So now we have our own little mini book right here. So we would essentially have our cover, and then we would have 2 pages on the inside, or 2 sheets of paper on the inside, representing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So that way we would have an 8-page story and a cover made ready for us. So it's also really helpful to make a dummy version of this book first. So that way you can know how to print out your comics on a sheet of paper just like this. We're going to be using, or we would be using Photoshop for such a procedure here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write front, and I'm going in and I'm going to be numbering each and every single page with what that page number is going to be. 2. So I have 2, 3. This is also going to be really helpful to be able to plan out things such as 2-page spreads. So you know how to be able to line up your book so you can have elements from one page carry over into the other. So I got 4 and 5 right here. I'm going to do 6 and 7. And 8. And I'm leaving the inside covers blank here, but if you wanted to, you could put things such as like sketches or your thumbnails or character designs there. And let's check out this book right now. So we got our front cover. We're going to open it up. where we got blank on one side, 1. We got 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, and 8 going on. But if we were to take one of these sheets of paper, any of them, like let's say I got 4 and 5 right here, if I were to flip it around, we would know that we would put 6 next to number 3. So that way when we print it, we would know how to just set this up for double-sided printing. The other one here would be like, you're going to have number 8 right next to number 1, and if you flip it around, you're going to have number 2 next to number 7. So once you get this worked out, you're going to have to test it out with your own printer and just determine, how exactly you'll be able to do double-sided printing from your printer. I want to give you guys a chance to see how I use this technique to set up one of my comics. This is for a comic of mine called Guild. It's one of my favorite short stories I've ever written and drawn. It is a Wild West story about a bounty hunter who starts to feel guilt about his career for the first time in his life. So the story is 8 pages long, which means that I only need to use 3 sheets of paper. So I have, for the interior, I have sheet 1A and 1B, then sheet 2A and 2B, and then the cover. Now for the cover here, I don't have anything on the back, so that way I have a chance to be able to write a message to anyone who picks up the book, or I can do a doodle for somebody, and it also is a great chance for me to be able to save some money on printing cost. So I just have the cover over here to the right, and on the left I just have a little blurb for what my story is about. Every man has a price, every man has a value. And then finally, a very important tip. I highly recommend that you throw up whatever your social media sites are on the back cover, as well as your website. If you don't have a website yet, don't worry about it. You'll get one eventually, I'm sure. Now, going into the heart of the comic here, each sheet of paper is able to have 4 pages on it. So let's go ahead and check out sheets 1A and 1B. So using sheet 1, I have page 1 on the right and page 8 over here on the left. So this is going with that exact same dummy model that I made about a minute ago. Now what I'll do is that I will print this page out, and depending on the printer that I'm using, I will then flip my page over according to how the printer needs me to do it, and then I will just place it right back into the paper tray, and then I will print sheet 1B, where I have page 2 on the left and page 7 on the right. After I'm done with that, I will then print sheet 2A, where I have page number 6 on the left and number 3 on the right, which, by the way, this is one of my favorite pages I've ever done, because I love doing crowd scenes. They're a blast to be able to bring them to life. Now, using the same method to flip it 1B over, I will flip 2B over, where I have page number 4 on the left, and then page number 5 right over here on the other right. So then I will get all 3 sheets of paper printed off with the 8 pages in the middle and the cover just being its own sheet of paper. And then I will staple them together, and voila, I have a comic. So once you get those 3 pages printed out, we're just going to staple on the inside right here, and you'll have a complete book. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy of Guild in this office to be able to show you guys, but I did manage to be able to find a copy of one of the books I made back in grad school that uses this exact same technique. Now, earlier I mentioned that you could fit 8 pages of comics on the interior of a comic book such as this, but here I did a 10-page book. And I didn't want to have to get an extra sheet of paper, so what I did for Tomahawk was I ended up using the inside cover to be able to have that be page 1. So typically page 1 will usually start on the right page. Here was a unique situation where I have it starting on the left. Now, I was able to figure out how that was going to work by making my dummy copy first, and then understanding that each one of these sheets of paper, where we're right here where it says front and back, on the back here I would have page 1 and page 10. So when I start to use the computer like Photoshop to piece everything into place, I have a good understanding of where everything needs to go. This will be something that you'll be able to bring with you to places like conventions, to Artist Alley meetups. You can also bring it to to school and share it with people. Distribute it. It's a really quick and easy way to be able to get your comics up and out there. Another great place to be able to actually upload your comics to would be digital. Right now, Comixology is a great resource for posting up your comics because they have a section of their app where artists such as yourself will be able to take your completed comics, and they have a user submission portal for it. Now, if you ever do go that route, make sure that you follow every guideline that they have about setting it up properly using Photoshop. It's their job to be able to make sure that your comic's going to look the best that it can on mobile devices. And so if they tell you that they need something in a certain resolution, then go with it, because they know what they're talking about, and they'll be able to ensure that your comic will look the best on their platform. The same would go for another great one called Webtoons, which is another great place to be able to upload your comics. And honestly, one of the best things about comics is just sharing your stories with everybody. Whether you're sharing it in Comixology, Webtoons, whether you get your own website for it, sharing it through Instagram is another great resource for it. Just go out and share those comics online. Well, that about does it for my workshops for the Kennesaw State University Summer Arts Intensive. I had a lot of fun making these videos, and I hope that you guys had a lot of fun watching them. I also hope that you take the skills that I introduced you to this week and use them yourself to make some animations or some comics. Whatever you make, please send it to Kennesaw State University. Drop us a line because everyone there would love to be able to get a chance to see it, especially myself. A few passing words I'd like to mention to you guys before I sign off here is that number one, don't be afraid to ever make a mistake because you learn more from making mistakes than you would from doing it correctly. Number two, if you ever do make a mistake in art, they're a lot easier to cover up than you may realize. Number three, the only person you should ever be in competition with in terms of art is yourself, because as long as you practice every single day, you're going to be a better artist today than you were yesterday. And number four, this is one of my favorite things too, is that if you have an artist that inspires you and really helps to to just move your art, I would recommend that you don't just follow that particular artist, you research that artist and figure out who inspired them. And so after that way you're not just you're not just studying the artist who inspired you, you're pretty much walking down the exact same path that they did. For instance, Bill Watterson from Calvin and Hobbes is one of my all-time favorite cartoonists and one of my biggest inspirations. And I found out that Crazy Cat is one of his biggest inspirations, and so I started studying the Crazy Cat style. So yeah, that about does it for my workshops, guys. On behalf of my dogs, Marlin, Esper, as well as myself, thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope to see some artwork from you guys. If you decide to swing by KSU when it comes time for college, make sure to look for my blue hair, say hello, and I'm looking forward to working with you. Catch you later.